Actually, some breaking news. Attorney General Merrick Garland is holding a news conference to announce war crime charges stemming from the Russian invasion of Ukraine. Let's dip in.
And David Sumberg, Assistant Director in charge of the FBI Washington Field Office. On February 24th, 2022, Russia commenced its full-scale, unprovoked invasion of Ukraine. In the nearly 2 years since, we have all seen invading Russian forces commit atrocities on the largest scale in any European armed conflict since the Second World War. We have all heard the accounts of Ukrainian civilians targeted and executed, Ukrainian children forcibly deported, and Ukrainian women and girls sexually assaulted. And as the world has witnessed the horrors of Russia's brutal invasion of Ukraine, so has the United States Department of Justice. That is why the Justice Department has filed the first ever charges under the U.S. War Crimes Statute against 4 Russia-affiliated military personnel for heinous crimes against an American citizen. Congress passed the U.S. War Crimes Statute nearly 30 years ago to give us jurisdiction to prosecute war crimes committed against American citizens abroad. In an indictment returned yesterday in the Eastern District of Virginia, we have charged 4 Russia-affiliated military personnel with war crimes against an American citizen living in Ukraine. The charges include conspiracy to commit war crimes, including war crimes outlawed by the international community after World War II, unlawful confinement, torture, and inhuman treatment. Like all defendants in the U.S. criminal justice system, the defendants in this case are entitled to due process of law and are presumed innocent until proven guilty. We allege that in April of 2022, 2 commanding officers of Russia-affiliated forces, Suren Suranovich Mukherjian and Dmitry Budnik, as well as 2 lower-ranking soldiers whose first names are Valery and Nazar, committed war crimes against an American citizen who had been living in Russia since 2021. The victim was living in Milovy, a small village in southern Ukraine, and was not participating in the armed conflict between Russia and Ukraine. As such, the victim was what is known as a protected person under international law. After Russian forces invaded Milovy, the victim was abducted from his home by 3 of the defendants, Mukherjian, who was one of the commanding officers, and Valery and Nazar, the lower-ranking soldiers, and their co-conspirators. During the abduction, we allege that those defendants threw the victim to the ground while he was naked, tied his hands behind his back, pointed a gun at his head, and beat him with their feet, their fists, and the stocks of their guns. We allege that they forced him into a building that Russia-affiliated forces were using as a jail and into a closet that they were using as a jail cell. We allege that as they interrogated him, they tortured him. They beat him again with a gun. They punched him in his chest and stomach. They threatened to shoot him. They stripped off his clothes and took pictures. One of their conspirators threatened to sexually assault him. And during the interrogation, when the victim's answers did not satisfy the defendants, we allege that Budnik, who was also a commanding officer, threatened the victim with death and asked for his last words. We allege that Nazar and other conspirators then took the victim outside. There, they forced him to the ground, put a gun to the back of his head. The victim believed he was about to be killed. They moved the gun just before pulling the trigger, and the bullet went just past his head. After the mock execution, the victim was beaten and interrogated again. At one point, he was told through an interpreter that he was, quote, going to sleep. And he was told by Mukherjian, quote, good night, leading the victim to believe again that he was about to be killed. During his 10 days detained by Russia-affiliated forces, the victim in this case was tortured, threatened with sexual assault and execution, forced to perform manual labor, and beaten in the head, chest, and stomach with the soldiers' feet, their fists, and their guns. Again and again, he believed he was going to die. These charges against 4 Russia-affiliated military personnel are the Justice Department's first criminal charges under the U.S. War Crimes Statute. They are also an important step toward accountability for for the Russian regime's illegal war in Ukraine. Our work is far from done. I want to recognize the criminal divisions, including the Human Rights and Special Prosecutions Section and the War Crimes Accountability Team, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of Virginia, the FBI, and the Department of Homeland Security, including Homeland Security investigations. Their diligent and skillful work is what made these historic charges possible. I also want to recognize the incredible courage of our partners in Ukraine, specifically our counterparts in the Ukrainian Prosecutor General's office. In the midst of war, Ukrainian prosecutors and investigators have risked their lives to pursue justice for the Ukrainian people. We are honored to stand alongside them. Finally, I want to recognize our partners in the international community. We will continue to work closely alongside them to gather evidence and build cases so that when the time comes, the United States and our partners will be ready to ensure accountability for Russia's war of aggression. This is an historic day for the Justice Department that builds on a long history. The War Crimes Accountability Team prosecuting this case is modeled in part on the Justice Department's decades-long effort to identify, denaturalize, and deport Nazi war criminals in the United States. During that effort, the Department's Office of Special Investigations brought more than 130 cases against perpetrators of Nazi crimes. In the vast majority of those cases, the perpetrators were not identified until decades after they committed their horrific crimes. This history should make clear that the Justice Department and the American people have a long memory. We will not forget the atrocities in Ukraine, and we will never stop working to bring those responsible to justice. Throughout our work, we will continue to put our trust in the rule of law. The rule of law is the best answer we have to crimes that cannot be truly answered. The rule of law is how we pursue true accountability for the individuals responsible for those crimes and how we deter future aggression. And the rule of law is how we pursue justice in a way that protects people and protects our shared humanity. I'm now honored to turn the podium over to Secretary Mayorkas.
Thank you very much, Attorney General Garland. In 2008, the Department of Homeland Security and its Homeland Security Investigations, or HSI, created the Human Rights Violators and War Crimes Center, the only U.S. government entity focused entirely on investigating these global atrocities. For 15 years, this select group of special agents, attorneys, intelligence analysts, criminal research specialists, and historians from across the federal government have worked together and with their international counterparts to hold those who engage in the perpetration of war crimes, genocide, torture, and other human rights violations accountable. Today, an investigation more than a year in the making by this center and its federal partners bears fruit. For the first time in our nation's history, federal agents gathered sufficient evidence to bring charges of war crimes perpetrated against an American citizen in violation of Title 18 of the United States Code, Section 2441. The allegations, which the Attorney General has described, detail gruesome events. The agents who made this case possible were tireless in their investigation, giving extraordinary attention to every detail and making considerable sacrifices throughout. In August 2022, these HSI agents traveled with their DOJ and FBI partners to speak with an American citizen who had recently been evacuated from Ukraine, where he had been living with his wife. The U.S. citizen told our HSI agents how, a few months earlier, he had been violently abducted from his home in the village of Milove by members of the Russian armed forces. He told HSI investigators, as the Attorney General noted, that these Russians had stripped him naked, threw him face down to the ground, tied his hands behind his back, pointed a gun at his head, and severely beat him, including with the stocks of their guns. The Russian soldiers then took him to a nearby Russian military compound and held him there illegally for 10 days. He reported that while in forced captivity, he was subjected to 2 interrogation sessions during which he was tortured by the 4 defendants named today. He reported that the Russian defendants had again stripped him naked, photographed him, and severely beat him about the chest and stomach. One defendant staged a mock execution of him. After asking for the victim's last words, one of the defendants named today forced the victim to the ground, put a gun to the back of his head, and pulled the trigger, purposely missing the victim's head by mere inches. Throughout this past year, our HSI agents, with the assistance of HSI's Human Rights Violators and War Crimes Center and alongside our FBI partners, have worked to corroborate the victim's allegations. They traveled internationally to interview the victim's family. They identified and interviewed individuals who were present within the general vicinity of Milove around the time the victim was held in captivity, who confirmed the Russian forces' occupation in the area. Based on the information they obtained, the HSI agents and their FBI partners were able to identify the 4 defendants whose indictments are announced today. I am extraordinarily proud of these federal law enforcement agents. Thanks to their exceptional work, the United States will hold the Russian perpetrators of this unthinkable mistreatment, these unacceptable human rights violations, accountable. The work of these agents and the indictments unsealed today speak to 2 fundamental truths. First, there is no higher responsibility of government than to safeguard its people and their basic human rights. As today's announcement makes clear, when an American citizen's human rights are violated, their government will spare no effort and spare no resources to bring the perpetrators to justice. Second, the evidence gathered by our agents speaks to the brutality, criminality, and depravity of Russia's invasion. The Ukrainian people have had and must continue to have America's full support against Russia's unjust, unprovoked, and unlawful war of aggression. We cannot allow such horrific crimes to be ignored. To do so would only increase the risk they will be repeated. It is now my honor to introduce Chris Wray, the Director of the FBI.
Thanks, Ali. Good morning, everyone. The FBI's mission is to protect the American people and uphold the Constitution here at home and around the world. And today, together with our partners, we are once again fulfilling that mission. The charges unsealed just a few minutes ago reveal absolutely unconscionable crimes, including unlawful confinement, torture, and other inhumane acts committed against one of our own citizens by 4 individuals affiliated with the Russian military. That American, like so many others, became a victim.
All right, we're listening to the FBI director here. We were also listening to the Secretary for the Department of Homeland Security, as well as Merrick Garland, the Attorney General, announced for the first time the U.S. laying charges under the U.S. War Crimes Statute against 4 Russian-related military personnel for what they say were gruesome, inhumane abuses that involved unlawful confinement and torture against an American citizen in Ukraine, in the Kherson Oblast region during the war last year. This is an effort by the U.S. government to show it's using every resource at its disposal to prosecute under a war crime statute Russian nationals for what they did during the war. So a major development there out of Washington. We'll continue to listen in and bring you all other updates on this story today as we get them.